The story said that Caterina de' Medici, who married the King of France, she brought to Italy Cabernet for the first time more than 300 years ago. So Cosimo III understood that the Sangiovese grape that was already planted in the area could perfectly match with the Cabernet. So he invented this wine and actually wrote a sort of a sheet where he described exactly how the wine was made, the wine that could be shipped because it could age in barrels, and mostly the areas of production. So we have the first super Tuscan of 300 years ago.
Fascinating people with stories to share, fabulous wines and the best local foods to accompany them, and beautiful places to discover and visit. All of this and more on Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast. Join me for a new episode every Tuesday. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel to Tuscany, to the small Carmignano wine area west of Florence, to meet my guest Annabella Pascale, the CEO and president of the historic Tenuta di Artimino wine estate. Welcome, Annabella. Many thanks for being my guest today. How are you?
I'm fine, Mark. Thank you. And thank you for having me here and giving a chance to all your listeners to hear our story and all the Carmignano area story so far.
Well, it's a beautiful story. And as you know, it's an area I know and love well, having actually lived in a neighboring hamlet just a few kilometers from you, the little hamlet of Comiana. But that was 35 years ago, Annabella. And I know much has happened since then. I know much has happened at the Tenuta di Artimino. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. But for our listeners, Annabella, as we said, Carmignano is a tiny wine zone making very prestigious and beautiful wines. And though it's only 20 kilometers from Florence, many people may not know of it as well as other Tuscan winelands. So can you give us a general impression of this beautiful Carmignano wine zone?
Sure. Well, as you were saying, we are glad to have the chance to talk about Carmignano because we are a very small DOCG. And you know that in Italy, DOCG is the top level of wines. But unfortunately, or fortunately, we're just 18 producers, but very small, except from Tenuta di Artimino. We have 70 hectares of vineyards and 700 hectares of the estate, and Capezzana, that is 80 hectares. So we are the biggest producer, but it's a very small DOCG, so not very well known, but actually is one of the ancients of Italy, and we can say of the world, because it was the Medici family who invented this wine. The story said that Caterina de' Medici, who married the King of France, she brought to Italy Cabernet for the first time more than 300 years ago. So Cosimo III understood that the Sangiovese grape that was already planted in the area could perfectly match with the Cabernet. So he invented this wine and actually wrote a sort of a sheet where he described exactly how the wine was made, the wine that could be shipped because it could age in barrels, and mostly the areas of production. So we have the first super Tuscan of 300 years ago, before any other producer in Italy started to use Cabernet, Merlot, and as you may know, those grapes are called international grapes because are produced mostly all over the world. But in this area, we can say that Cabernet is a grape from this specific area because it's been there more than 300 years.
That is such a fascinating story, Annabella, and I'm really glad you've shared this historic link with France through Catherine de' Medici, going back, as you say, hundreds of years, and also that being put down in the Bando of Cosimo III, this possibly one of the very first examples of denominazione d'origine controllata, if we could say,
Right.
identifying the four special regions in Tuscany that deserved to be singled out for the excellence of their wines. And Carmignano, this tiny area, was part of that. The Medici had a huge influence on your particular area, on Carmignano, and particularly also for Tenuta di Artimino. Tell us about the Medici.
Well, Tenuta di Artimino was an estate built by the Medici, so it's the stone of the Carmignano area, and maybe where all the story begins. Because, first of all, we have to say that, as you were saying, it's very difficult to understand the whole Tuscan production, like Piedmont, are the most important but also fascinating lands for wine. And that's why everyone in the world wants to study those two regions because they're also very difficult to understand. You have Sangiovese in practically every area of Tuscany, but in every area, as the terroir teaches us, the wine comes in a complete different way because for our example, we have the Arno River, we have mountains, we have hills. In some other areas, we have different soils, we have the sea. So Tuscany is a very complex and amazing region. So we're not very far from Florence, in an area not very well known today because everybody knows Chianti Classico or Brunello, which are located in the south of Tuscany, while our area, I'm thanking you for giving like a spotlight to this area because it's not very well known, but even for experiences and a touristic spot is an amazing place to visit. We have in our estate this huge villa, which is a UNESCO heritage. It's a villa built by Ferdinando I, the Grand Duke of Tuscany, in 1596. In only 4 years, he built this huge castle, we can say. There are only 14 castles in Tuscany around Florence built by the Medici, and our villa is the latest. And the Medici used to go there for the hunting season for vacations. And saw Ferdinando and Buontalenti, the architect, they were on a horse ride and saw this beautiful hamlet, this village of Artimino, which was medieval. And we know in that area, in the Carmignano area, in the Artimino estate, there were the Etruscans who already produced wine back in 50 and 60 before Christ. So this land has a lot of history to tell. And he fell in love with this area. So he made Buontalenti architect build this huge and amazing villa that today is a venue for event, but you can also visit as a tourist, where we organize also a lot of parties as it's supposed to be. I mean, that's the purpose of the building of the villa by Ferdinando. And in this area, you have also our hotel, a four-star hotel, two restaurants, a swimming pool, tennis courtyards, and some apartments in the hamlet of Artimino. And as you were saying, other restaurants too, like La Delfina, which is a very ancient and famous restaurant of the area, which still produce some of the most iconic plates of the area. And yeah, it's a very small village, but you have all the Tuscan flavors, all the Tuscan typical frame.
Yes, absolutely. As you say, very small little hamlet, but dominated by this beautiful Medici villa. Isn't it called the Villa of 100 Chimneys? Because you have so many chimneys on the roof. It's really quite a sight in this classic Tuscan landscape of vines and olive trees and beautiful hills. And as you said, Annabella, the Medici loved this area for hunting. And
Yes.
they actually built a wall around to delineate what they called the Barco Reale.
Barco Reale, exactly. Actually, it's also the name of our DOC. Barco Reale was the name of the wall that was built by the Medici to protect their hunting area. And just because they have relationships with all the most important families in Europe, they used to have wild animals, and today we have birds, we have boars, we have more typical animals because it's still a hunting area. And the Barco Reale, we still have some examples of the ancient Barco Reale bricks actually, but it was a very important area for all the important families in Europe. They were coming to the Medici estate, they were making business, they were going for hunting. So it was a very well known area that we are sorry that back today this is not very famous so far, but actually this is our goal. We are happy to tell these stories and let it go far far away, even to the US, even to Asia. We love to tell our story.
Well, it's an important story. And as you say, in its time, then it was really at the center of Europe where exciting things were happening in Renaissance art. I know Lorenzo de' Medici had his villa at Poggio a Caiano and was a patron, great patron of the arts, as were all the Medici and the famous artists of the day would come to Poggio a Caiano, Botticelli and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, who came from just over the hills from you at Vinci originally. So it's an area of great culture. And as you also mentioned, Annabella, going back to Etruscan times, when I was living in Comiana at the Villa di Calabria, Casa Calonica, we rented, we had just discovered an Etruscan tomb and were excavating it. And I know now that that's become a very significant find, the tomb that's on the estate. So there are Etruscan excavations all over the area, and the
Yes.
were great lovers of wine. So this tradition of wine growing in Carmignano goes back thousands of years. But I'm really interested in the story you mentioned of Cabernet coming hundreds of years before the Super Tuscans were invented. The Tignanello, of course, the story of Tignanello in the late 60s to then in 1970s, introducing Cabernet into.
In the region, yes.
But the discipline for Carmignano had earlier than that had always allowed Cabernet. Is that right?
That's right. We have to put Sangiovese on a specific percentage, of course. Most of all, it's Sangiovese because it is the main character of Tuscany, but also a good percentage of Cabernet. Then you can add other red grapes, and in our case, most of all, it's Merlot, or some other times it's Syrah, or some other traditionalists are Canaiolo, which is also used for the Chianti, but mostly is a marriage between Sangiovese and Cabernet.
Okay, now let's learn the story of Tenuta di Artimino. Let's go to your estate. I know it's a very historic estate, and as you mentioned, it's a big estate, one of the two big estates in Carmignano, and has been producing wines for, I remember the wines well, 35 years ago. Beautiful wines, and that has grown and grown and continued. So tell us the story of the Tenuta di Artimino.
Yes, thank you. So, as I was saying, the story starts very, very back in times with the Etruscans. And as you were saying, we have ruins and all over. Actually, the villa was built under Etruscan ruins because they found out, like Ferdinando found out, that they have back in the soil sweet water. So it was possible to have drinkable water. So that's why the Etruscan were there, and that's why Ferdinando built the villa there. Right in front of the villa, we have the medieval hamlet, the medieval village that is also an hotel, is actually also part of our hotel because we have apartments there, but also lots of small restaurants, very typical and nice restaurants. It's a nice spot for drinking a glass of wine for an aperitivo, as we always do in Italy. So we have lots of stories, one above the other. We can talk hours of the Etruscan, of the medieval time where there were lots of battles actually to gain the Artimino village. But most of all, the most interesting related to the Medici because of the architecture we have, of the paintings we have, and the frescoes we have in the villa. What Caterina did, Caterina de' Medici, was great also bringing to France some typical plates from the Medici court, and now those plates are believed to be French, but actually were brought by her. She also brought the fork and the knife to France, that they were not using it yet. But also, thanking to her, we got Cabernet in our area. So Medici family is very, very important also for the story of our wines. But our story starts from my grandfather. My grandfather was a famous racer, bicycle racer. In 1935, he won the hour record.
Oh my, wow.
He won the Olympics in Los Angeles and lots of Giro d'Italia.
What was his name, Annabella?
His name was Giuseppe Olmo.
Okay.
Olmo actually is the surname, and it's also the name of our bicycle production because we still produce bicycles.
Oh, okay. I'm a great tifoso of cycling, and I know that the Giro d'Italia begins today, so I'm excited to be
Yeah, yeah.
following this.
It's a
Yes.
great coincidence. And my
Yeah.
grandfather used to run with the Bianchi t shirt,
Okay.
with the
Yes.
Bianchi team. And then,
Hmm.
of course, he created his own brand. But during the Second World War, he stopped and decided to become a businessman and create his own bicycle production. And he was also a businessman in many other fields, but he decided to buy Artimino in the 80s. He came from a modest family, but the land was for him a refuge, a sustenance, was beauty, was responsibility. So that's why he fell in love with the Artimino estate.
Was he from Tuscany?
No, no, no. It was from Genova actually, but was living in Milan because Milan was the great city of opportunities in the 50s. So by
Okay.
the 80s, when I was born, I remember the first time we went to Artimino and it became part of our family businesses. My uncle and my aunt went to live back there and started to rebuild Artimino because it had been destroyed a bit by the war. Like there was no more ceiling and the rooftop for the villa. The hotel had been bombed. So it was necessary to rebuild part of it. And my grandfather wanted to make a new idea for the villa, like a venue for events, and a new nice hotel that by that time was just a place for hunters to go and have some food, you know. And you know who was cooking for the hunters?
No, who?
Mrs. La Delfina, which was the name actually of this
Oh,
woman.
okay.
She was a chef. She was cooking in the hotel. She was living in the hotel. And my grandfather said, why don't you make your own restaurant and I create an hotel in this area? So he gave this nice villa, this nice house right in front of the huge villa to Mrs. La Delfina. And now we have the restaurant there.
Oh my goodness, and her son Carlo is still there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
Yeah.
very old and a big heel, but he's doing fine as you know him.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, the story. I would have visited and perhaps met your aunt and uncle. It would have been in 1989 that
Yes,
I was living
actually,
in
89
Comiana.
was the exact year we put the first stone by our group. So
And I
Altimino
the
has
hotel
changed.
as well, Annabella, because my in-laws came out and stayed in the hotel. Beautiful hotel.
Yeah. Well, it has changed very much, of course. And Mark, I would love you to come back because now it's a four-star hotel. It's a beautiful spot. We are working in have this relationship, business relationship with the Melia, which is a Spanish group that
Hmm.
manage important hotels, and our hotel is managed by Melia. So I have a chance to take care more of the wine estate. We have 100 hectares of olive trees, and we produce a fantastic Evo. And we have, of course, our wines. So we started a new partnership with Riccardo Cottarella, that, as you may
Okay.
know,
Yes, I know
is the
Ricardo. Yes.
one of the most important winemakers in Italy, but most of all is very passionate and related to vineyards more than the cellar. So he's a man that is helping us to change and work better on the vineyards, on the terroir, and then on our wines. So our wines have completely changed in these 20 years. And I can say I started to work for Artimino, for the estate of my family, with my cousin 12 years ago, and our goal was to make this spot, this place, a unique place in Tuscany, a new landmark, a place that everyone would want to see and spend this vacation, because we have a lot of experiences, good food, and a very nice hotel. But most of all, we want to be known for our wines, for the quality of our wines. So I think that by now we're reaching that goal, and I really would love to have a chance to taste our wines now.
Yes, absolutely. And I really will look forward to visiting you as soon as I can. I'd like to discuss four of your wines that I know are quite iconic wines and really represent not just the Tenuta di Artimino, but this is also what Carmignano is. Starting with the Vin Ruspo, which is a very interesting wine. I love it.
Well, Vinruspo is the name that was used by the farmers to call the rosé wine that also has a very long history in our area. Not every producer produced the Vinruspo, but four or five producers have this ancient DOC that meant wine stolen because, of course, it was the first production, it was the first moment that skin was in contact with the liquid, with the wine. So they used to steal by the important families, important producers, this wine, and that's the reason of the color.
So these would have been the Mezzadri then, who were
The mezzadri, right?
would have been stealing that little bit of wine. Yes, I think that's a really good historic story to explain this beautiful rosato wine, and I think it's one of the best rosatos in Italy.
Well, is Puglia is a region in the south of Italy that was very well known for their rosatos, but as I can say, our rosato, our rosé, has a very long history and it's actually an ancient rosé. I love the rosé from Provence, from France, and we are trying to work on the color and the sapidity, of course. Our rosé has a soft pink color, has sensations of white flowers, wild strawberries, wild rose, and we want to give it a direct taste, bold, fresh, very balanced, and very pleasant on its finish. So it's perfect fair pairing. It's perfect for the aperitivo, but a perfect pairing for all the Italian typical foods like Tuscan cuisine, ribollita, which is a vegetable soup of black cabbage, white beans, carrots, and bread that you find everywhere in Tuscany, or papa al pomodoro, which is bread soaked into tomato and garlic sauce. It's, of course, perfect with cold cuts, prosciutto that we have in Italy, and excellent for aperitifs, as I was saying.
Okay, let's turn now to your Serge Biagio Barco Reale di Carmignano. We've already mentioned this wall that was around the Medici area of hunting reserve, and that's given its name to this wine.
Yes, Ser Biagio, the name is in honor of Biagio Pignata, which is also the name of one of our restaurants. He was, we can say, the general manager of Ferdinando I, the Grand Duke of Tuscany. He was working for him, and he had his own house right next to the villa, and that's where is located our restaurant today. So we wanted to honor this man that did a lot of work for Artimino, but also has a long history all around Tuscany, and it's a blend of Sangiovese, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. It's a very fresh wine. It's a deep ruby red color. It's fresh, so you have wild strawberries, cherries, violets in Sangiovese in our area. You can find a lot of violets. It's a typical note of our wines, not only from Artimino but also from all the Carmignano area. So it's a fresh wine. It's in any way bold. Tannins are very gentle, and also this one is used to for aperitivos, for cold cuts, semi-seasoned cheese, and Italian first courses like pasta or also grilled meat during a BBQ day, for instance.
Yes, actually, it's that lighter expression of Carmignano compared to the Grumarello Carmignano Reserva, for example. Tell us
Yes.
about your flagship wine.
Well, as you were saying, we are talking about Carmignano area here, but Artimino is an estate of 700 hectares, and half of the area is under the Carmignano DOCG, and the other half of the area is under the Chianti DOCG. So we also produce a very traditional but also fresh and cool Chianti Montalbano, which is the name of our specific area. We also produce lots of IGTs. We are just presenting to the press. So I will let you know and hope you will invite me again to tell you about our new premium wines. We have been doing a study of our terroir, and we're working on specific, like 100% only one grape. So there's gonna be a new 100% Sangiovese, 100% Cabernet Merlot, because we want our client and wine lovers to feel our terroir. Because terroir comes out mostly when you describe just a specific grape. So we presented at Vinitaly these new varieties and these new wines with the Riccardo Cottarella. And in the next few months, you'll have a chance also to taste it. But our focus is always to let the Carmignano be known. So Grumarello, as you were saying, is the most iconic wine. We have now the production of the 2020. Grumarello takes his name from the historic vineyard on the property and is a Carmignano Riserva, which means is a vintage, is a specific vintage. The vinification is very of a high quality. There's a careful selection of the cluster, the grapes, and prompt brought to the winery. Fermentation takes place in temperature controlled still tanks, of course. Each variety is vinified in single varietal. The maceration lasts 15-20 days, so we have a soft extraction of the most elegant and velvety tannins, we can say. When the alcoholic fermentation ends, we have, of course, the malolactic fermentation, and the Sangiovese rest in Slavonian oak casks, while the Cabernet Franc, the Cabernet Sauvignon lay in barrels. But nowadays, the Grumarello is made only by Cabernet Franc and Sangiovese because we wanted to go back to roots and to how the Medici used to make it.
The Medici brought Cabernet Franc, not Sauvignon. Is that right?
Is that right? Because by that
No,
time,
I'm wondering why you're using Cabernet Franc rather than Sauvignon.
yeah, that's a good question. We also have Cabernet Sauvignon, and of course, we use it because we love it. But we believe that by that time it was a Cabernet Franc because Cabernet Sauvignon was invented later on.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So Grumarello is a wine with a deep ruby red color. The nose is fragrant. There are notes of violets, still notes of violets, of plums. Has well integrated sensations of vanilla, but the taste is rich, persuasive, and is enveloped in tannins, and of course can age for decades in your cellar.
Yes, okay. That is a really special wine, and I urge our listeners to seek out Grumerello Carmignano Riserva and also other Carmignano Reservas that they may encounter because, as you say, Annabella, this unique history of Cabernet in the area makes these wines unique. They're not simply mirroring super Tuscans made in other areas. They have an identity with roots that are very deep and old for Cabernet having been in Carmignano for so long. They're really part of the identity of the area. Now, final wine I'd like to discuss is also very traditional. This is the Occhio di Pernice Vinsanto di Carmignano, a very special wine made in very small quantity. Is that right?
Yes, 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 you're absolutely right. The appellation is Vinsanto di Carmignano. Occhio di Pernice is the name of the wine, but actually, every sweet wine made by 50% of the red grapes can be called Occhio di Pernice. So, in our case, the blend is Sangiovese, most of all, and then San Colombano, which is a white grape, and Trebbiano, which is a white grape, and it has a amber yellow color. Well, it's a very interesting wine because on the palate it's still a wine, so you can pair it also with food, not only with desserts. Of course, with cheese, but we tried it also with the risotto or with some interesting second courses. But on the nose is a sweet wine, actually. So the nose is intense, is complex. There are notes of dried figs, which are typical of our area. There is walnut, there is apricots and almond, but the palate is structured and enveloping, and there's still a great minerality, but also, of course, sweetness. Those two qualities are very well balanced because there's still an important acid vein, we can say. So in late September, grapes are harvested by hand and selected bunch by bunch. And as the tradition, Tuscan tradition wants, they are placed on cane racks to dry in a well ventilated room. At the end of their drying period, which is mostly 3 months, so by mid January, the grapes are pressed. We use French oak barrels for at least 5 years to make a good vintage. Of course, during this period, the alcoholic fermentation takes place. It can last several months. And then Vinsanto Occhio di Pernice ages in bottles at minimum for 3 years.
It's an exquisite wine and made by this traditional method that's very laborious and very time consuming. Many years from harvesting those grapes, drying them, to actually being able to taste the wine. What vintage do you have on release now?
Now there is the 18.
Okay, so that's 7 years.
Yes.
Final product I'd like to discuss, and you've already mentioned it, but I have very fond memories of the Olio Extravergine d'Oliva from Carmignano, from the wine estate that we were living on, which is no longer there, the Villa di Calabria. We used to go over to the villa and we would buy the olive oil. It would be in the orchi, the terracotta giant terracotta urns, and the count would scoop it out with a ladle and funnel it into bottles. And it was our olive oil, we felt, and we loved it so much. But I know that all of the olive oil from Carmignano is particularly highly prized. Tuscan oil, of course, is some of the best in the world, but the extra virgin olive oil from Carmignano is very special. So tell us about yours.
Yes, actually, it's a blend of Leccino, Frantoio, which are the most important olives. And we have 100 of hectares, and we are in this past 5 years, we've been working hard on our olive trees to produce the best extra virgin olive oil. We are studying also the terroir, even for the olive trees, because we found out that in some specific area we have very ancient trees. So we're trying to work on that specific trees because we would like to make a better product compared to all the most important olive oils in Tuscany and in Italy. But of course, it's a very expensive work. So the extra virgin olive oil in Italy, there's an issue because of course if you want the quality you have to pay it, but there are lots of producers coming from all over Europe or Africa that put in the market products not very of high quality. So there's a fight there to promote quality. There's a space in the market for everyone, but of course, as in wines, you have to recognize the hard work behind that bottle.
I think that's a good point to make, Annabella, for all of our listeners that exquisite estate, single estate, extra virgin olive oil is as precious as the most precious wines. And it does come at a premium, but it is so good that it, in my opinion, it's something that it is really indispensable to have. It's a real treat. Annabella, you've mentioned the hotel and the restaurant, but just as we're closing now, I would just like to say, I think for our listeners who, as I say, are located all around the world, Artimino and the Tenuta di Artimino offers a terrific opportunity to stay in real comfort and luxury, but actually on a wine estate. And for me, that's one of the best ways to actually experience a wine area is actually to stay and experience that real hospitality. So just tell us again, the hotel has how many rooms and you have two restaurants. Tell us briefly about the two restaurants.
Yes, I mean you can find everything on our website artimino.com. There's all a website designated to wine, the terroir, olive oil, so all the wine experience. But also we have the biggest part related to the tourism, which is I've been working for Artimino in these 12 years, mostly giving my best to the tourism because we wanted to give this area what really needed and what really give everyone the experience worth it, because not only the villa, it's a unique place in Tuscany. It's a venue for events. We organize lots of parties and meetings, and most of all in this season, weddings. But it's a huge villa also to give a visit as a tourist. Right next to the villa, there's a four-star hotel which has 37 rooms. But you have this nice boulevard with all the trees, and the 300 meters in front of the villa, we have the village of Artimino, where we have two restaurants, we have 100 of apartments, so we can fit 200 people sleeping in our hotel. It's a diffuse hotel. It's an hotel made not only in a single building, but it's all around Artimino area. So it's a very immersive experience. And not only our restaurant, one is a bistro, the other one is a more typical place for meat, for BBQ, for Fiorentina, and to taste good wines overlooking the villa. But we have also other 2 3 restaurants in this area. So it's a place where you can really enjoy some summer nights or springtime and walk around for trekking trails. We have a tennis court. We have, of course, lots of experiences related to electric bicycles or wine tasting pairing with food. and it's a very interesting place to stay for at least 2 or 3 days. You don't even need to go to Florence, which is just 20 kilometers away. You can do everything you want in Artimino for 2 or 3 days.
Okay, well, that's a really good description. It's a very immersive borgo, this small hamlet dominated by the beautiful villa, but the medieval village that is at its foot. So, as I said, Annabella, I'm very fond of the Carmignano area. I would like to come back and spend 2 or 3 days and perhaps do some cycling in the wine hills, which would be
Wow,
very
Mark,
nice.
thank you. I would love to host you, so please come back. Come back to the Artimino and Carmignano area.
I will certainly do that. Annabella, thank you so much for sharing your time and taking us all to this special area just outside of Florence, so close to Florence that it's so easy to visit. I'm sure you've made our listeners want to jump on a plane to Italy right away and head to Artemino, and I do recommend it. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank
Grazie.
you. Thank you very much. And thank to Italian Wine Podcast for giving me this chance.
A presto. We hope today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast has transported you to somewhere special. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at italianwinepodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.